Before the main body of Lama Yeshe's biography begins, there is a brief prelude describing the situation in Tibet when Lama Yeshe was born. This brief historical prelude is as follows. In the 1930s, the world was struggling with the Great Depression, and once again war clouds were gathering in both East and West. The people living on the Tibetan plateau, surrounded by the high Himalayas and isolated from the rest of the world, were generally unaware of these events. And although there were members of the Tibetan government who had some knowledge of the turmoil in the rest of the world, they were determined not only that Tibet would remain neutral, but that it should continue in its isolation. During this same period, Tibetans were experiencing turmoil of their own. In December 1933, Thupten Gyatso, the 13th Dalai Lama, the spiritual and secular head of Tibet, passed away. Because the Dalai Lama was the highest authority in the Tibetan Buddhist hierarchy, as well as head of the Tibetan government, this was an enormous loss. In his final testament, written in the last year of his life, the 13th Dalai Lama had warned that Tibet would soon be threatened by dangers, quote, from both without and within. After the death of the Dalai Lama, the Tibetan government traditionally passed into an interregnum period under the rule of a chosen regent until the next Dalai Lama could be found, enthroned, and invested with full authority. However, within days of the death of the 13th Dalai Lama, an ambitious minister of finance attempted to seize power. Although this attempt failed, it created great confusion, during which, and contrary to standing Tibetan policy, 3 military representatives from China were granted entry visas into Lhasa, under the guise of being on a mission of sympathy. In the past, China had tried to use the presence of such representatives in Lhasa to support its claim of having political dominion over Tibet, though in the early 20th century, the Tibetan government had thwarted this ploy by refusing entry to such representatives. In the confusion brought about by the death of the Dalai Lama and the attempted coup that followed, the Tibetan government allowed such a delegation back into Tibet, and this time it did not depart once its so-called sympathy mission was concluded. Instead, the Chinese representatives opened a liaison office in Lhasa with a wireless radio operator. As subsequent events were to demonstrate so tragically, the presence of these Chinese representatives in Lhasa heralded the eventual loss of Tibet's long-cherished sovereignty and independence. But before that happened, in 1934, the Tibetan National Assembly chose 23-year-old Reding Rinpoche, a young and inexperienced incarnate Lama who had been very close to the 13th Dalai Lama and was known for his high spiritual attainments, to be Tibet's regent. Although reluctant at first to take this position, he finally accepted and immediately initiated the search for the new Dalai Lama. The outside world was about to make violent entrance into the lives of the previously isolated Tibetans, who, as foretold by the 13th Dalai Lama, soon found themselves facing great danger.